She married an elderly Haitian woman to pay off a debt. What the court uncovered shocked everyone. On the morning of March 14th, a 911 call came in at 6:47 a.m. from a residential neighborhood in North Miami. The caller reported that his wife had collapsed in the bathroom and was not breathing. Paramedics arrived within 9 minutes. The woman was pronounced dead at the scene. The initial assessment pointed to natural causes, a cardiac event in a 71-year-old with documented health conditions. By the end of that same week, her bank accounts had been accessed repeatedly, and her nephew in Port-au-Prince had received a disturbing phone call from someone claiming legal authority over her estate. What appeared to be a widow's quiet passing would soon reveal a sequence of financial desperation, calculated deception, and a marriage that existed only on paper. Mary Claire Fontaine was 71 years old when she died. She had lived in the same modest single-family home in North Miami for nearly 30 years, a neighborhood where Creole was spoken as often as English, and where the smell of griot and pickles drifted from kitchens on Sunday afternoons. She had immigrated to the United States in 1994, fleeing the political instability that had consumed Haiti during that period. Her late husband, Jacques, had worked as a mechanic until his death from diabetes complications in 2011. Marie Claire herself had spent decades as a seamstress, working from home, and occasionally taking contracts with local bridal shops. She was known in her community as a woman of routine and faith, attending Mass at Église Notre-Dame d'Haïti every Sunday, and maintaining close contact with family members still living in Haiti. Marie Claire had no children. Her closest living relatives were a nephew in Port-au-Prince and a cousin in Boston, both of whom she supported financially with regular remittances. She owned her home outright, having paid off the mortgage years earlier. She had a savings account with a modest but stable balance, a small retirement fund, and a life insurance policy listing her nephew as the sole beneficiary. Her health had declined gradually over the previous 2 years. She managed type 2 diabetes, hypertension, and early-stage kidney disease, conditions that required daily medication and regular medical monitoring. Despite these limitations, she lived independently and maintained her own affairs with meticulous attention to detail. She kept handwritten ledgers documenting every expense and every dollar sent back home. Derek Osborne was 34 years old. He had been born and raised in Broward County, the son of a landscaper and a home health aide. He had completed 2 years of community college before dropping out to work in construction. Friends described him as charming when he needed to be, and distant when he didn't. He had a history of short-term employment, frequent relocations, and accumulating debt. By early 2022, Derek owed over $47 to various creditors, including $18 to a private lender connected to individuals who did not rely on legal recourse for collection. The pressure had intensified over the previous 6 months. He had received multiple threats, and his car had been vandalized twice. He was not violent by nature, but he was cornered. Derek and Marie Claire met through a community connection that neither had sought intentionally. Derek's mother had worked briefly as a home health aide for an elderly Haitian man in Marie Claire's neighborhood. During one of her visits, Derek had accompanied her to help move furniture. Marie Claire had been present at the home visiting the same man, a distant acquaintance from her church. The interaction was brief and unremarkable. Derek was polite and helpful. Marie Claire thanked him in accented English and offered him a cold drink. The encounter would have ended there had Derek not recognized an opportunity. Within 2 weeks, Derek appeared at Marie Claire's church. He introduced himself as someone exploring faith after a difficult period in his life. He attended services, participated in communal meals, and made himself visible without being intrusive. Marie Claire noticed him, as did others. In a community built on shared displacement and collective memory, a young American showing interest was unusual but not unwelcome. Derek spoke respectfully, asked questions about Haitian culture, and listened when older congregants shared stories of the homeland. He learned phrases in Creole. He complimented Marie Claire's cooking after a church potluck. He offered to help her carry groceries to her car. The attention was gradual and measured. Derek did not pursue Marie Claire romantically in any overt sense. Instead, He positioned himself as someone reliable, considerate, and interested in her well-being. He repaired a broken fence in her backyard without being asked. He drove her to a medical appointment when her usual transport fell through. He mentioned in passing that he was struggling financially due to medical bills from a family emergency, a fabricated story designed to elicit sympathy without triggering suspicion. Marie-Claire, whose life had been shaped by hardship and survival, responded with the generosity that was central to her character. She gave him $200, which he accepted with performative reluctance and profound gratitude. Over the following months, Derek became a fixture in Marie-Claire's life. He visited her home regularly, always with a stated purpose, delivering something, checking on a repair, dropping off groceries he claimed were extras from a bulk purchase. Marie-Claire, who had lived alone for over a decade, welcomed the company. She spoke to him about her late husband, her family in Haiti, and her worries about aging without children nearby. Derek listened with apparent empathy. He shared selectively about his own life, emphasizing struggle and resilience in ways that mirrored her own experiences. He never asked for money directly, but he created situations in which Marie-Claire offered it. A car repair, an overdue utility bill, a loan to avoid eviction. Each time, he promised repayment. Each time, repayment never came. By late August, Derek owed Marie-Claire over $3. She had begun to express concern, not anger, but worry about whether he was managing his affairs responsibly. Derek responded with reassurance and a proposal that he framed as a solution to both their problems. He suggested that they marry. Not for love, he clarified, but for practical reasons. He claimed that marriage would allow him to access health insurance through a benefit program tied to her Medicare status, a misleading half-truth that exploited her limited familiarity with the American healthcare system. In return, he would move into her home, help with maintenance, and ensure she was not alone as her health declined. He would also, he promised, repay every dollar he owed her once his financial situation stabilized. Marie-Claire did not agree immediately. She consulted her nephew in Haiti, who urged caution. She spoke with her cousin in Boston, who expressed deep skepticism. But Derek persisted with patience and emotional appeals. He emphasized her isolation, the difficulty of managing the house alone, and the security that his presence would provide. He pointed out that she had no children to care for her, and that her relatives were too far away to help in an emergency. He framed the arrangement as mutually beneficial, temporary, and entirely pragmatic. He assured her that it would not change her will, her finances, or her autonomy. It would simply be a legal formality that made both their lives easier. On September 22nd, Marie-Claire and Derek were married at the Miami-Dade County Courthouse. The ceremony was witnessed by 2 clerks. No family members attended. Marie-Claire wore a simple dress. Derek wore a button-down shirt and khakis. The marriage certificate was signed and filed. Derek moved into Marie-Claire's home that same week. He brought little with him. 2 duffel bags of clothing, a laptop, and a cell phone that he kept with him at all times. He set up in the guest bedroom, maintaining the appearance of separation and respect. For the first few weeks, he was helpful and considerate. He cooked meals, ran errands, and accompanied Marie-Claire to church. To external observers, the arrangement appeared benign, if unusual. But inside the house, small changes began to occur. Derek started managing the mail, sorting through envelopes before Marie-Claire saw them. He suggested setting up online banking to make bill payments easier, a process that required her passwords, which she provided without suspicion. He offered to handle phone calls from creditors and service providers, positioning himself as a protective intermediary. Marie-Claire, trusting and unaccustomed to navigating digital systems, accepted the help gratefully. She did not notice that Derek had begun accessing her accounts independently. She did not realize that the boundaries she assumed were fixed had already started to dissolve. By mid-October, Derek had established himself as the primary administrator of Marie-Claire's household affairs. He collected the mail each morning before she woke, opened bank statements, and filed them in a folder he kept in his room. He answered the landline when it rang, screening calls and deciding which ones warranted Marie-Claire's attention. When her nephew from Port-au-Prince called, Derek often claimed she was resting or unavailable, promising she would call back later. Those return calls became less frequent. Marie-Claire mentioned it once, expressing concern that her nephew might think she was forgetting him. Derek assured her that family understood when health took priority. The financial arrangements shifted without formal discussion. Derek suggested that combining their resources into a shared checking account would simplify household expenses. He explained that this would make it easier to pay bills, buy groceries, and manage medical costs without constant transfers between accounts. Marie-Claire hesitated. Her savings represented decades of careful management, remittances she had planned to send, and security she had built alone. Derek did not pressure her directly. Instead, he created inconveniences. He claimed the pharmacy would not accept payment from her account due to a technical error, and that he had covered her prescription costs from his own non-existent funds. He mentioned that the mortgage company had sent a confusing notice requiring joint account verification, a fabricated claim Marie-Claire could not easily confirm. Gradually, she agreed to add his name to her checking account for practical purposes only. Within days, Derek began making withdrawals. The amounts were initially small, $50 here, $100 there, always accompanied by explanations. Car repairs, groceries, co-pays for medical appointments he claimed to have scheduled on her behalf. Marie-Claire did not monitor the account closely. She trusted that Derek was managing expenses as agreed. She did not see the ATM receipts showing withdrawals made late at night. She did not know that her balance, which had remained stable for years, was diminishing steadily. At the same time, Derek began researching Marie-Claire's financial standing more thoroughly. He accessed her laptop while she slept, using the password she had shared for bill payments. He reviewed bank statements, retirement fund balances, and the life insurance policy documents saved in a folder labeled Important Papers. The policy listed her nephew in Haiti as the sole beneficiary with a payout of $75,000. Derek took screenshots of the documents and saved them to his phone. He searched online for information about changing beneficiaries, contestation periods, and estate claims in Florida. The searches were methodical. How long after marriage can a spouse contest a will? Can a beneficiary be changed without notifying the previous designee? What are the requirements for spousal inheritance rights in Florida? He cleared the browser history each time. Marie-Claire's health provided both cover and opportunity. In late October, she experienced a dizzy spell during Sunday Mass and had to sit down abruptly. Derek was attentive, helping her to the car and insisting they go directly to the emergency room. The episode was attributed to blood sugar fluctuation and dehydration. The attending physician adjusted her medication and advised close monitoring. Derek took the discharge paperwork, filed it carefully, and began accompanying Marie-Claire to every medical appointment. He introduced himself to her doctors as her husband and caregiver, a role the medical staff accepted without question. He asked detailed questions about her prognosis, medication side effects, and emergency protocols. He requested copies of all test results. In early November, Derek raised the subject of the life insurance policy. He did so carefully, framing it as a concern for her nephew's well-being. He suggested that since they were now married, it might create legal complications if something happened to her, and the policy did not reflect her current marital status. He implied that her nephew could face delays or difficulties claiming the benefit. He offered to contact the insurance company to clarify the situation. Marie-Claire, unfamiliar with insurance law and trusting Derek's intentions, agreed to let him make inquiries. Derek called the company, identified himself as Marie-Claire's husband, and requested the forms necessary to update the beneficiary designation. The forms arrived by mail 3 days later. Derek intercepted them. He did not ask Marie-Claire to sign immediately. Instead, he waited for a moment of vulnerability. On November 12th, Marie-Claire received difficult news from Haiti. Her nephew's wife had been hospitalized due to complications from childbirth. The medical costs were overwhelming, and the family was asking Marie-Claire for financial help. She was distraught, unable to send the full amount they needed because her account balance had diminished in ways she did not fully understand. Derek comforted her, promised to figure out a solution, and suggested she rest. That evening, he presented the insurance beneficiary change form. He explained it as a procedural update that would not affect the payout, but would streamline the process and avoid bureaucratic delays that could prevent her nephew from receiving the money quickly when needed. Exhausted and distracted, Marie-Claire signed the document. Derek mailed it the following day. The new beneficiary was Derek Osborne, spouse. Marie-Claire's cousin in Boston called in late November. She had not heard from Marie-Claire in weeks and was concerned. Derek answered the phone and explained that Marie-Claire had been experiencing memory issues and fatigue, standard complications of her conditions, but nothing alarming. He assured the cousin that he was taking excellent care of her and that there was no need to worry. The cousin asked to speak with Marie-Claire directly. Derek said she was sleeping and offered to have her return the call. He did not relay the message. When the cousin called again 2 days later, Derek did not answer. He told Marie-Claire that her cousin had called but seemed busy and said she would try again later. Marie-Claire, whose sense of time had become less reliable due to medication and fatigue, accepted the explanation. By the end of November, Marie-Claire's world had narrowed significantly. She no longer attended church regularly, with Derek citing her health as a reason to avoid crowds. She had not spoken to her nephew in over 2 weeks. Her mail was managed entirely by Derek. Her finances were opaque to her. She had signed documents she did not fully understand. And Derek, who had arrived as a temporary solution to loneliness and practical need, had become the sole mediator between her and everything outside the walls of her home. December began with an incident that should have prompted immediate intervention, but instead passed unnoticed by anyone outside the house. Marie-Claire woke in the early hours of December 3rd, feeling severely disoriented. Her heart was racing, and she could not stand without losing her balance. Derek found her sitting on the edge of the bed, gripping the nightstand for support. He helped her back into bed, gave her water, and told her it was likely a reaction to her new medication. He did not call 911. He did not contact her doctor. He waited until morning, and then scheduled an appointment for later that week, ensuring he would be the one to drive her and speak with the physician. What Marie-Claire did not know was that her medication routine had changed. Derek had begun managing her pill organizer, a task she had previously handled herself. He prepared the weekly doses each Sunday evening, sorting tablets into the labeled compartments. Marie-Claire assumed he was following the prescriptions exactly. She did not verify the dosages. She did not notice that certain pills appeared slightly different in size or color, variations Derek attributed to generic substitutions from the pharmacy. In reality, Derek had been adjusting quantities. He increased her blood pressure medication slightly, enough to cause dizziness and fatigue, but not enough to trigger obvious crisis. He reduced her diabetes medication intermittently, creating instability in her blood sugar levels. The goal was not immediate harm, but gradual incapacitation, a state in which Marie-Claire would become more dependent, less aware, and less capable of questioning his decisions. The medical appointment on December 7th yielded results that served Derek's narrative. Marie-Claire's blood pressure was elevated, and her glucose levels were inconsistent. The doctor expressed concern and asked whether she had been taking her medications as prescribed. Marie-Claire said yes, because she believed it to be true. Derek, sitting beside her, nodded in agreement and suggested that her memory might be affecting compliance. The doctor adjusted the prescriptions again and emphasized the importance of strict adherence. Derek collected the new prescriptions and filled them that same day. He continued managing the pill organizer without Marie-Claire's oversight. During this period, Derek's online activity intensified. Browser history recovered later showed searches conducted in the early morning hours when Marie-Claire was asleep. The queries were specific and calculated. How long does it take for diabetes medication errors to cause complications? What are the symptoms of accidental medication overdose in elderly patients? Can an autopsy detect intentional medication mismanagement? How soon after death can life insurance benefits be claimed? He also researched Florida probate law, spousal inheritance rights, and the process for contesting a will when no children are involved. He joined an online forum under a pseudonym and asked hypothetical questions about managing estate transfers quickly and avoiding family disputes. He saved several responses that outlined legal strategies. On December 10th, Marie-Claire received her monthly bank statement in the mail. Derek had been intercepting these documents for weeks, but this one arrived on a Saturday when he was out running errands. Marie-Claire opened it and reviewed the balance. She saw a number that did not make sense. Her checking account, which should have held over $11,000, showed a balance of $3.247. She went through the transaction list carefully, using the reading glasses she kept beside her chair. Withdrawals appeared almost daily: ATM cash advances, online transfers, point-of-sale purchases at locations she did not recognize. Her hands shook as she turned the pages. When Derek returned, Marie-Claire was sitting at the kitchen table with the statement in front of her. She asked him to explain the transactions. Derek's response was immediate and controlled. He sat down across from her, took the statement, and reviewed it with the expression of concern that appeared genuine. He explained that most of the withdrawals were for household expenses: utilities, groceries, medical copays, and repairs. He reminded her of the fence repair, the plumber who had fixed a leak, the pharmacy bills. He suggested that her memory issues were making it difficult for her to track spending accurately. He offered to create a detailed ledger to help her understand where the money had gone. Marie-Claire wanted to believe him, but the numbers did not align with her recollection of their expenses. She asked to see receipts. Derek said he would gather them, but that many had been discarded after payments were confirmed. He promised to be more organized moving forward. That night, Marie-Claire could not sleep. She lay in bed replaying the conversation, trying to reconcile Derek's explanations with the figures on the statement. She thought about the insurance form she had signed, the medical appointments he controlled, and the phone calls from her family that never seemed to reach her. For the first time since the marriage, she felt afraid. She did not yet understand the full scope of what was happening, but she recognized that something fundamental had shifted. The next morning, she retrieved an old cell phone from her dresser drawer, one she had stopped using after Derek set up her current phone. She charged it slowly in the bathroom, while he was occupied elsewhere. She intended to call her nephew directly, without Derek knowing. Before she could make the call, her health deteriorated sharply. On the evening of December 12th, Marie-Claire experienced severe nausea and vomiting. Derek attributed it to something she had eaten and encouraged her to rest. The symptoms persisted through the night. By morning, she was too weak to stand. Derek called her doctor's office and described the symptoms. The nurse advised bringing her to the emergency room if the vomiting continued. Derek said he would monitor her closely and call back if necessary. He did not take her to the hospital. Instead, he adjusted her medication again, citing the doctor's previous advice about managing side effects at home. Marie-Claire spent the next 2 days in bed, drifting in and out of sleep. Derek brought her water, soup, and her pills. She took them without question, too exhausted to resist. Her nephew in Haiti tried calling the house 3 times during this period. Derek answered each time and said Marie-Claire was resting and could not come to the phone. He promised she would call back when she felt better. She never did. By December 15th, Marie-Claire had not left the house in over a week. Her physical condition had stabilized somewhat, but her mental clarity fluctuated unpredictably. She experienced moments of lucidity, in which she recognized that her situation had become dangerous, followed by periods of confusion in which she could not organize her thoughts enough to act. Derek monitored her constantly. He checked on her every few hours, brought meals to her bedroom, and ensured she took the pills he provided. He had stopped attending to his own affairs outside the house, staying close to prevent any unsupervised contact with the outside world. On the morning of December 16th, a social worker from Marie-Claire's church attempted a wellness visit. The church had not seen Marie-Claire in weeks, and several congregants had expressed concern. The social worker, a woman named Claudette who had known Marie-Claire for years, arrived unannounced at 10:30 a.m. Derek answered the door. He was polite but firm. He explained that Marie-Claire was recovering from a stomach illness and was not receiving visitors on her doctor's advice. Claudette asked to see her briefly, just to confirm she was all right. Derek hesitated, then said Marie-Claire was sleeping and that waking her would set back her recovery. He offered to have Marie-Claire call the church when she felt better. Claudette left her phone number and asked Derek to make sure Marie-Claire received it. He took the card, thanked her, and closed the door. He never gave Marie-Claire the message. That afternoon, while Derek was in the garage, Marie-Claire managed to retrieve the old cell phone she had charged days earlier. Her hands trembled as she dialed her nephew's number in Port-au-Prince. The call connected. Her nephew answered in Creole, his voice filled with relief and concern. Marie-Claire began to speak, but her words came slowly and without full coherence. She told him she was not well. She said Derek was controlling everything. She said she needed help but did not know how to ask for it. Her nephew urged her to call the police or go to a neighbor. Before she could respond, she heard footsteps in the hallway. She ended the call abruptly, turned off the phone, and hid it under her mattress. Derek entered the room moments later carrying a glass of water and her evening pills. He asked if she needed anything. She said no. He watched her for a moment longer than usual, then left. Her nephew in Haiti tried calling the house landline immediately after their conversation ended. Derek answered. The nephew identified himself and demanded to speak with Marie-Claire. Derek's tone remained calm. He said Marie-Claire had just taken her medication and was resting, and that disturbing her now would be harmful. The nephew insisted it was urgent. Derek replied that he understood the concern, but that as Marie-Claire's husband and caregiver, he had to prioritize her medical needs. He suggested the nephew call back the following day during a better time. The nephew, frustrated and alarmed, said he would contact authorities if he did not speak with his aunt within 24 hours. Derek acknowledged the statement without emotion and ended the call. That night, Derek made a decision. The situation had become unstable. Marie-Claire had reached out for help, and her family was now actively questioning her isolation. The timeline he had been managing carefully was collapsing. He could not afford delays, investigations, or interventions. He searched online again, this time with more urgent queries. What happens if someone with heart and kidney disease stops taking medication suddenly? How quickly can organ failure occur in elderly diabetics? What does a natural death from multiple chronic conditions look like? He read medical journal abstracts, forum posts from caregivers, and autopsy reports available through public records databases. He cleared the search history, but saved several articles to his phone. On December 17th, Derek stopped giving Marie-Claire her medications entirely. He prepared the pill organizer as usual, but he filled the compartments with vitamins and over-the-counter supplements that resembled her prescriptions in size and color. Marie-Claire, too weak and disoriented to inspect the pills closely, took them as directed. Within hours, her body began responding to the absence of critical medications. Her blood pressure spiked. Her blood sugar levels became erratic. She experienced severe headaches, increased confusion, and difficulty breathing. Derek documented her symptoms in a notebook, describing them as natural progression of her existing conditions. He did not call her doctor. He did not seek emergency medical attention. He waited. Marie-Claire's nephew called the house again on the morning of December 18th. Derek did not answer. The nephew left a voicemail stating that he had contacted the Haitian consulate in Miami and requested a welfare check. Derek listened to the message and deleted it. He knew he had limited time before external authorities became involved. That afternoon, he disabled the landline by unplugging the base unit and claiming to Marie-Claire that the phone company was experiencing service disruptions. He took her cell phone, citing concerns that notifications were disturbing her rest. She was too weak to protest. By the evening of December 19th, Marie-Claire's condition had deteriorated to the point where she could no longer speak clearly or move without assistance. She lay in bed breathing shallowly, her skin pale and cold. Derek sat in the chair beside her bed, watching. He did not call for help. He had already decided how the narrative would unfold. A woman with diabetes, hypertension, and kidney disease had succumbed to the inevitable progression of multiple chronic illnesses. She had been under the care of her devoted husband, who had done everything possible to keep her comfortable at home as she wished. The story was plausible, medically consistent, and supported by her documented health history. At 11:43 p.m., Marie-Claire opened her eyes and looked directly at Derek. For a brief moment, her gaze was clear and focused. She tried to speak but could not form words. Derek leaned closer. She reached toward him weakly, whether in plea or accusation, he could not be certain. He took her hand and held it until her breathing slowed, then stopped. He waited 5 minutes, checking for a pulse. There was none. He released her hand, stood, and left the room. He did not call 911 immediately. Instead, he spent the next hour staging the scene, ensuring everything appeared consistent with natural death during sleep. Derek called 911 at 6:47 a.m. on December 20th, more than 7 hours after Marie-Claire had stopped breathing. He reported that he had woken to find his wife unresponsive in bed. His voice on the recorded call was steady, with appropriate pauses that suggested shock without hysteria. He answered the dispatcher's questions clearly. Yes, she had been ill. Yes, she had multiple chronic conditions. No, she was not breathing. No, he did not know CPR well enough to attempt it. The dispatcher kept him on the line until paramedics arrived. The responding unit entered the home at 6:56 a.m. They found Marie-Claire in her bed, positioned on her back with her hands folded across her chest. Her body was cold to the touch, indicating she had been deceased for several hours. Rigor mortis had begun setting in. The paramedics noted the arrangement immediately. Bodies do not naturally settle into composed positions after death. One paramedic asked Derek if he had moved her. Derek said he had adjusted her position slightly when he first realized she was not breathing, trying to check for a pulse. The explanation was plausible enough not to trigger immediate alarm, but it was noted in the report. Patrol officer arrived shortly after to document the scene as standard procedure for an unattended death. He observed that the bedroom was orderly. Medication bottles lined the nightstand, all labeled with Marie-Claire's name. A glass of water sat beside them. The officer asked Derek about her medical history. Derek provided a detailed account, citing diabetes, hypertension, kidney disease, and recent episodes of dizziness and nausea. He showed the officer discharge paperwork from her previous emergency room visit and a list of her prescriptions that he had typed and printed. The officer photographed the scene, collected the medication bottles as a precaution, and noted that there were no signs of trauma or struggle. The preliminary assessment supported natural causes. Derek signed the necessary forms and provided contact information. He declined the offer of victim services support, stating he preferred to handle arrangements privately. The officer left. The medical examiner's office was notified, and Marie-Claire's body was transported for routine autopsy given her age and the absence of a attending physician's certification. Derek was told the process would take several days. He thanked the officer for his professionalism and closed the door. Within 2 hours, Derek accessed Marie-Claire's laptop. He logged into her bank account using saved credentials and reviewed the balances. The checking account held $3.247. Her savings account, which he had not yet touched, contained $8.100. He initiated a transfer of $7.00 from savings to checking, citing household expenses in the memo field. He then used her debit card to withdraw $1,500 in cash from an ATM, the daily limit. He returned home and searched her filing cabinet for insurance documents, locating the life insurance policy with his name now listed as beneficiary. He photographed the policy details and emailed the insurance company's claims department, identifying himself as the surviving spouse and requesting instructions for filing a claim. At 2:30 p.m., Marie-Claire's nephew called the house from Haiti. The call went to voicemail because Derek had not reconnected the landline. The nephew left a message demanding immediate contact and stating that he had already spoken with someone at the Haitian consulate who would be checking on his aunt's welfare. Derek listened to the message an hour later. He did not return the call. Instead, he composed a brief email to the consulate's general inquiry address, informing them that Marie-Claire Fontaine had passed away peacefully due to complications from chronic illness, and that he, as her husband, was managing all arrangements. He provided no additional details and did not include contact information for her family. The following day, December 21st, the nephew contacted the North Miami Police Department directly. He explained that his aunt had called him days earlier expressing fear and confusion, that he had been unable to reach her since, and that he had just received an email from the consulate relaying news of her death from her husband, a man the family had never met. The officer who took the call filed a report and forwarded it to the detective division. A detective named Laura Munoz reviewed the complaint that afternoon. The circumstances were unusual but not uncommon in cases involving elderly individuals and late-life marriages. Still, the nephew's account of the distressing phone call warranted follow-up. Detective Munoz contacted the medical examiner's office and requested that the autopsy be conducted with additional scrutiny. The examiner agreed and prioritized the case. On December 22nd, the preliminary autopsy was completed. The findings showed advanced cardiovascular disease, kidney impairment, and markers consistent with poorly managed diabetes. However, the toxicology screen revealed something unexpected. Marie-Claire's blood contained no detectable levels of her prescribed heart or diabetes medications, despite the bottles on her nightstand being nearly full and recently refilled. The examiner noted this inconsistency and flagged it for further investigation. The cause of death was listed as acute organ failure secondary to medication non-compliance, but the manner of death was classified as pending further review. Detective Munoz obtained a warrant to seize Derek's phone and Marie-Claire's laptop. On December 23rd, she arrived at the residence with 2 officers. Derek answered the door and cooperated without resistance, though he questioned the necessity of the warrant. He stated that Marie-Claire had been managing her own medications until the final week when he had taken over due to her confusion. He maintained that he had followed the prescription instructions exactly. When asked why the toxicology showed no medication in her system, he appeared surprised and suggested that perhaps her body had stopped processing the drugs due to organ failure. The explanation was medically improbable, and Detective Munoz noted his tone as practiced rather than spontaneous. Forensic analysis of the seized devices began immediately. The search history on Derek's phone painted a damning timeline. Queries about medication mismanagement, symptom progression, inheritance law, and life insurance claims were recovered despite his attempts to delete them. The laptop showed that Derek had accessed Marie-Claire's financial accounts repeatedly in the days before her death, and had made transfers and withdrawals immediately after. Emails to the insurance company were time-stamped less than 8 hours after the 911 call. Most significantly, the old cell phone hidden under Marie-Claire's mattress was discovered during a secondary search of the residence. It contained the partial call log to her nephew and a voice recording she had started but not completed, in which she stated in Creole, "I am afraid. He is taking everything. I do not know what to do." On December 27th, Derek was arrested at the home and charged with manslaughter through culpable negligence. The charge reflected the evidence available at that point, showing deliberate withholding of life-sustaining medication. As the investigation deepened, prosecutors reviewed financial records, interviewed witnesses, and consulted medical experts. The case moved toward a grand jury. The grand jury convened on January 15th. Prosecutors presented evidence spanning financial records, digital forensics, medical expert testimony, and witness statements. The medical examiner testified that Marie-Claire's death was not inevitable, but was directly caused by the cessation of medications that had been keeping her condition stable for years. A pharmacist confirmed that the prescriptions had been filled on December 14th, meaning Marie-Claire should have had adequate medication available. The pills recovered from her organizer were tested and found to be vitamin supplements, not her prescribed drugs. The actual medications were discovered hidden in Derek's bedroom closet, still in their original bottles, untouched. The grand jury returned an indictment on January 22nd. Derek Osborne was charged with murder in the second degree, exploitation of an elderly person, and fraud. The murder charge reflected the prosecution's assertion that Derek had knowingly caused Marie Claire's death through deliberate deprivation of life-sustaining care. The exploitation charge addressed his systematic theft of her assets and manipulation of her legal and financial decisions. The fraud charge covered the falsified beneficiary change and insurance claim. Bail was set at $500. Derek could not post it and remained in custody at the Turner Guilford Night Correctional Center. Pretrial motions consumed the next several months. Derek's public defender argued that the death was the result of negligence, not intent, and that Marie Claire's underlying conditions were the true cause. The defense sought to exclude the search history, claiming it represented hypothetical research rather than planning. The motion was denied. The court ruled that the pattern of searches, combined with the physical evidence of withheld medication and financial activity, established a clear sequence of intentional conduct. The voice recording from Marie Claire's hidden phone was admitted as a dying declaration, an exception to hearsay rules given that she expressed fear and perceived threat shortly before her death. The trial began on June 3rd. The prosecution's case was methodical. Financial experts testified that Derek had withdrawn over $14 from Marie Claire's accounts in the 3 months before her death, and that his debts to dangerous creditors provided clear motive. The insurance investigator explained that the beneficiary change occurred weeks before Marie Claire's death and was processed using a signature obtained under false pretenses. Marie Claire's nephew testified via video link from Haiti, describing the alarming phone call and his subsequent inability to reach his aunt. Claudette, the church social worker, recounted being turned away from the home despite her concerns. Detective Munoz walked the jury through the digital evidence, showing the timeline of searches and the deliberate concealment of activity. The defense presented limited testimony. Derek did not take the stand. His attorney called a witness who had known Derek casually and described him as nonviolent and stressed. The defense argued that Derek had been overwhelmed by caretaking responsibilities, had made mistakes in medication management due to confusion, and had panicked after Marie Claire's death, leading to poor decisions regarding finances. The argument failed to address the hidden medications, the falsified pill organizer, or the preemptive research into inheritance and insurance. The prosecution's rebuttal emphasized that confusion does not explain concealment, and panic does not explain planning. The jury deliberated for 6 hours. On June 18th, they returned a verdict of guilty on all counts. Derek showed no visible reaction. Sentencing was scheduled for August 12th. At sentencing, the court heard victim impact statements. Marie Claire's nephew spoke about a woman who had survived dictatorship, poverty, and loss, only to be betrayed in her final years by someone she had tried to help. Her cousin from Boston described the guilt of not intervening more forcefully despite sensing something was wrong. The prosecutor requested the maximum sentence, citing the calculated nature of the crime and the exploitation of a vulnerable immigrant elder who had contributed to her community and supported family across borders for decades. Derek's attorney requested leniency, citing his lack of prior violent offenses and arguing that desperation rather than malice had driven his actions. The judge rejected the characterization. In her remarks, she stated that the evidence showed not a single impulsive act, but a sustained campaign of control, theft, and ultimately, deprivation of life. The court sentenced Derek Osborne to 25 years in state prison for second-degree murder, with additional concurrent sentences for exploitation and fraud. He would be eligible for parole after serving 85% of the sentence. Marie Claire's estate entered probate. The fraudulent beneficiary change was invalidated, and the life insurance payout was redirected to her nephew as originally intended. Her home was sold, and the proceeds were distributed to her family in accordance with intestate succession laws, as she had never formalized a will. The church held a memorial service in her honor, attended by dozens of congregants who remembered her quiet generosity and steady faith. Derek's creditors never received payment. The private lender connected to individuals who had threatened him filed a civil suit, but there were no assets to claim. The debt remained unresolved. Derek entered the prison system with no financial means, no family support, and a conviction that marked him as both predator and failure. The case prompted no legislative changes and generated limited media coverage beyond local reporting. It was not exceptional in its brutality, but in its mundane cruelty. An elderly woman had opened her home to someone in need, and that act of generosity had been weaponized against her. The marriage had been transactional from the beginning, built on exploitation disguised as partnership. The justice system had responded, but only after Marie Claire was beyond its protection. Her nephew kept the small photograph she had sent him years ago, showing her smiling in front of her home, the place she had worked a lifetime to secure, and that had become the site of her unmaking. The investigation closed. The file was archived. Marie Claire Fontaine's name appeared in no further legal proceedings. What remained was a record of a life ended not by age or illness alone, but by betrayal disguised as care.